morning, everyone, again. I'm really pumped to introduce this talk. We were not able to disclose too much information about that in the agenda so far. I'm very happy to have my colleagues Dennis and Frida here talking about their most recent research, and I'm happy to give the stage to those two.
Okay, hello everyone. So my name is Dennis, this is Frida. We are both penetration testers and researchers at ERNW, and we've been researching in the area of Bluetooth for a while now, and today we're going to present one of the things we found, one of the things we researched, and that is hacking Aroha-based Bluetooth audio devices. So maybe you remember back in the old days, people had headphones with cables. That was sometimes a little bit annoying, but you had good quality, and that was basically the de facto standard up until some device vendors started to remove the headphone jack. And then you either had to use adapters or you had to buy one of their Bluetooth wireless headphones. Nowadays, a lot of people are running around with these headphones, which means that Bluetooth is basically everywhere. You have people with Bluetooth headphones in cafes, you see them in trains, you see them in office buildings, or even in gyms. And one of the things that's really central to these Bluetooth headphones is this love relationship between the Bluetooth headphones and a phone. Or to put it a bit more technically, this cryptographic bond. So what do people use Bluetooth headphones for? Well, of course, they're listening to audio, it's music, podcasts, whatever. There's telephony and voice messages, and there's also voice assistants like Siri or Gemini. So let's imagine we have an evil pair of headphones. What could these evil headphones do? Well, they could listen to your audio content, so to your music and podcasts. They could listen to your microphone or record the microphone. They can listen to your calls. They could even make calls, or they could access your phone book. One other thing, maybe they can act as an input device. Well, no, that's actually one of the areas that has been discussed in research before. Impersonating other device types in Bluetooth is something that a lot of operating systems have already mitigated. So that was basically the motivation to our research question, and that was, can we make a benign pair of headphones evil? So basically, can we turn these into this? And yeah, as I said before, we have been doing some Bluetooth research in the past, and one thing we had left over from our previous Bluetooth Auracast research was this random pair of Bluetooth headphones, basically. So we started with that. And when you start research on an IoT project, one of the first things you want to do is, for example, try to obtain the device's firmware, analyze the device's firmware, or maybe identify debugging interfaces. We also had a second device from the very same vendor, and that was a Bluetooth Auracast transmitter device. That's not really headphones, but it's like a similar device. And the very good thing about this was that we had a firmware update file there already. So that's something we could start on. We also had a tool that you could use to configure and update this transmitter device via USB.
Yeah, and this is exactly where we started. We used this tool and performed a firmware update and did some configurations and captured the USB traffic we saw. What we saw when we looked at the traffic in Wireshark was that there was USB HID traffic going on. This is for people who have dealt with this type of things. It's not very surprising. USB HID is, despite its name, not only used for human interface devices, but it's very often used as basis for just as transparent transport protocol for custom protocols. So it basically serves as a catch-all communication channel via USB that vendors use when they want to implement a custom protocol, but don't want to go through the hassle of designing a whole Bluetooth USB level protocol. And when we had a closer look at the USB HID packets we saw during the firmware update, we very quickly realized that, unsurprisingly perhaps, chunks of the firmware file we had appeared in a certain type of packet, and we saw many of them. And when we looked a little bit closer, we also saw there was a part of this message that just seemed to sequentially go up, and it kind of looked like addresses actually. And after thinking about this a little bit, we figured this is probably some way of writing this firmware update file to the transmitter. And we already had the firmware at hand because we had the update packet. We unpacked that, we loaded it in Ghidra, and followed the command ID of these packets we saw earlier. Because the packets we checked, they conformed to some specific format. We saw patterns. We saw something where we thought that might be a command ID. And we picked the one of these firmware update packets we saw, and we followed that. And we ended up at a place that looked very much like this. This is a little bit. We cleaned it up a little bit, and these command IDs you see there aren't genuine, but it looked basically like this. And as you can see, we identified a function we renamed command write page. We didn't have symbols, it's just we figured that's what it does, so we named it like that. And if you look at the switch, you can kind of guess that the rest of the functions that are being called for the different command IDs here are probably also doing storage-related stuff. And that's true. We quickly realized that the function just below the write page command really reads a flash page from the headphones from the transmitter's memory. So we went ahead and built a small Python tool that implemented these packets we saw, tried to re-implement what we saw with Python via USB HID, and we were able to dump the transmitter's flash via USB HID. So that was super cool. For the transmitter itself, it wasn't too exciting because we already had the firmware. The flash could still be interesting because there might some runtime data on it that might be interesting to us. But what really interested us was the fact that this also worked with a pair of headphones we had from the same vendor. So that was cool. We were like, this is a good starting point. We can really start looking into these headphones now because we have their firmware as well. But then at some point, I said to Dennis, wait a minute. This is not the ideal target, is it, right? Because these are just some random headphones from a vendor nobody uses. We've never seen them with anyone else. We just had them lying around. They're not super expensive. Is this really a target we want to invest a lot of research in? So we ask ourselves, are there maybe more prestigious targets? And maybe not these $9,000 diamond-crusted Bose headphones, but maybe at least something that's widely used. And we went ahead and thought, well, what did the transmitter and the headphones that we had from this one vendor, what did they have in common? And what they had in common was that the Bluetooth chip they were using, or also the application processor, actually this thing does both, was by a company called Iroha. And we said, okay, that's a starting point. Can we find more headphones and maybe some more prestigious, fancy, expensive, widely used headphones that use Iroha chips? And in fact, there are plenty of flagship models by reputable vendors that use Iroha chips. So we said, that's a really good thing. Let's buy a pair of these. And we bought exactly this pair that you can see here. It's a recent Sony model. And when we got it, we were like anxious to get the firmware. We started our tool, and well, we were greatly disappointed because nothing happened. The things didn't even enumerate as a USB device. They used the USB ports solely for charging. So that was kind of a dead end at first. But then we got thinking, okay, these headphones don't use USB. That's not really surprising if you think about it. No one really updates their headphones via USB or configures them via USB. Nobody does that. But how do you configure or update a pair of Bluetooth headphones? Well, there's an app for that. And there's tons of apps, actually. Like every vendor has their own companion app, for, at least on Android, for their models of headphones. And we installed the one for the pair of headphones we had and did what we did with Bluetooth. We looked at the traffic. And what we saw was essentially that, never mind that there's a little bit of censored parts here because we're still Don't want to disclose all the technical details. We come to get that later. But what we saw here, what is crucial actually, we saw RFCOM traffic. And again, for people who have dealt with these types of things, this is something noteworthy because it's basically the equivalent of USB HID. There is also HID via Bluetooth, but that's a whole different thing. If people want to do the thing people do with USB HID, meaning implement their custom protocol and just use the technology as a transport. If people want to do that with Bluetooth, they very often use RFCOM. It just gives you kind of a serial connection where you can build your custom protocol upon. And when we looked at the RFCOM packets in more closely, we very quickly found that, in fact, this protocol that we've seen via USB HID was spoken here via RFCOM. RFCOM, to give a little bit of background on it, is, as I said, a Bluetooth subprotocol, and it has channels, which are basically, they have numbers, and you can identify them by their number and connect to them and then transmit data via them. And if you don't know which number a channel has, there's a discovery protocol, it's called SDP, and what you then need is a UUID of the channel you want to connect to. And then you can use the SDP protocol to discover the channel's number you want to talk to, and if you've done that, you can actually start speaking RFCOM via this channel. And this is exactly what happened with our headphones, and there's a bunch of UUIDs for different vendors, but essentially they all use, in the end, they all use RFCOM to speak the protocol we already know via Bluetooth. So we went ahead and built a tool. This time we did it more, we did some more engineering. We built it a little bit modular. It was protocol transport agnostic, so it could use USB HID and it could use RFCOM as a transport. And we implemented the protocol again. Tried also to do that a little bit more, less hasty, let's say, and it worked very well. We were able to dump the flash of our Sony headphones via Bluetooth, and that was great. We were really excited at that point because we could really start looking into a prestigious, a widely used target. We could start at reverse engineering. We also already had some head start because we had analyzed a little bit the firmware of the cheap headphones. We had kind of an idea how the firmwares of this chip vendor work, and yeah. So this was a great tool. We built it using the Google Bumble Bluetooth library, which is a great thing. And we feel very comfortable in Python. That's why we used it. And we were happy with that.
But wait a minute. So Bumble is a fully featured Bluetooth stack written entirely in Python, which means it's entirely separated from your host operating system's Bluetooth stack. We never paired Bumble with the headphones. Why does this dumping still work? Well, pairing is apparently broken. That means anyone in Bluetooth range can also dump our headphones flash. But not only that, it also means anyone in Bluetooth range can just connect to our headphones and play music, listen to the microphone, and whatever. So there are a few Bluetooth Classic caveats. To establish a Bluetooth Classic connection, we need to know the device's Bluetooth device address. That's something you need to know. It's not impossible to find that address. So, for example, there's tools like the Ubertooth 1 where you can try to sniff out addresses over the air. And for something like Bluetooth, if someone is playing audio, this is actually very convenient because there's a lot of data throughput and you can capture a lot of traffic, and we actually tried this. It's really fast to identify these Bluetooth addresses, and you can sort of implement a heuristic to partially identify correct vendors. So if you see a Bluetooth address, you can kind of guess whether it's one of the vendors you want to target. So there's a bit of targeting, but also you might not really know which device you're targeting. And another thing, and that sort of depends on the headphone model itself and how cheap it is or how expensive it is, but a lot of devices only accept one connection at a time. So if we think from the perspective of an attacker, that means firstly, we'll have to find the address, And if we start attacking or dumping someone else's flash maliciously, audio will drop when we attack when they're listening. So that's sort of a bit of a bummer. I mean, it's still nice to do that, but we thought, well, there's this other kind of Bluetooth low energy, and it has a few properties that make this very interesting for us. So the main thing is Bluetooth low energy devices can, and they often do, send out advertisements. That's one of the main purposes of the protocol, to advertise these devices, to be able to find them. That means we can scan for them, and we don't really need to know their addresses to connect to them in many cases. Most Bluetooth Low Energy devices primarily use the GATT protocol, and it's just a very common protocol that also a lot of headphones use, for example, for the battery level or for the device name, as seen here. So we asked the question, can we dump flash via BLE2? And yes, we can. That was very nice. Just a bit background to GATT as a protocol. Well, the same protocol that we were talking about is built on GATT, so we could use it this way. GATT has services. These services then have characteristics, and you have sort of a tree view with multiple services and potentially multiple characteristics. And each characteristic you can read from, write to, or subscribe to, and you can basically configure these characteristics for reading, writing, subscribing, or all of them. These services and characteristics can be discovered by their UUIDs. And here we found that some vendors have vendor-specific UUIDs for this protocol, but in many cases it's just this one main protocol UUID. Well, I guess you know this drill. Wait a minute, we didn't have to pair there either. Technically, it's possible to request pairing for Bluetooth Low Energy, but it wasn't done here. So that means we can just discover these headphones via BLE advertisements, and then we just read and write to GATT characteristics to use our protocol to dump flash.
So to summarize, that was a bit terrible because we can speak this protocol without any authentication. We are Bluetooth Classic and Bluetooth Low Energy. We can scan for vulnerable devices using Bluetooth Low Energy, and we can use it to dump flash. So that was not good, but the question remained, what else can the protocol actually do? Because for now, we only looked at the flash reading thing. We saw something like writing in the beginning, that's where we started. But we tried to answer the question, what else can the protocol do? So we did some reversing of the firmwares, and we found at least these capabilities, which we could read the RAM. We can basically read from any RAM address, byte-wise. We can also write to any RAM address. We can read and write from the flash. We can trigger the firmware updates. We can specifically ask for Bluetooth link keys. We get to that later. There's a special command for that. We can ask for Bluetooth Classic address, so we can, for example, connect via BLE and ask for the Classic address, and then connect via Classic, if we wanted to do that. We can read out build versions and information about the firmware, and there's a ton of other stuff. Some we tried, and it's not in here because it's boring. Some we didn't try. There's still a lot we just didn't look at because it's just a lot. So this is very, very bad. But to really think about how bad exactly it is, we kind of want to do a demo, and this is where we get really nervous because we're trying to do a Bluetooth live demo, and this is insanity. Because, please bear with us. We're trying to do this because it's fun, and we really hope it will work. But please stay with us if we have to do some debugging or something doesn't work. Don't chase us out. So we have our colleague Julian coming up here. Hi. And he's gonna get some headphones. Dennis, you have them?
Der macht gerade noch kein Audio über Headphones.
And I'm going to give them to Julian. And here's the phone.
Der hat aber gerade nur HFP gemacht. Vielleicht nochmal neu connecten.
Okay. So Julian is just vibing along over there, and yeah, if you look at that guy and you see he's enjoying music, you might wondering what the hell is he enjoying so much. So we might want to know what's he listening to. And to do that, we built our toolkit. We built a media info command for our toolkit. This doesn't correspond to a message to a command message of this protocol we found, but it's built atop the RAM reading primitive. We just read a bunch of RAM addresses and follow pointers, and in the end, we try to acquire the information of what he's listening to. So this is, yeah, as you can see, this are the headphones he's wearing. We're connecting to them. We acquired the build version actually because these RAM addresses are hard-coded right now. We just have them hard-coded for every firmware version, and this is actually what he's just listening to. So that worked. I'm really glad. But we're going on. This is what we could do using the protocol. But as we said earlier, the fact that we can actually speak this protocol via Bluetooth Classic, which is also the technology that is being used for audio transmission with these headphones, means we can also just do exactly what these headphones were supposed to do. We can connect to them, we can transmit audio, we can receive audio. So this is what we're trying to demo next. Jörn is going down there, please. And as soon as we give him the go, he's going to have some very, very confidential conversations with some of the audience. And we're actually trying to eavesdrop on that. So what Dennis did just now is he connected to the headphones using some example code. It's basically a slightly adapted example from the great BT Stack project. Shout out. It's a Bluetooth stack in C, and it's great. And yeah, we just connected to the headphones using that, and we're now establishing an audio connection. We're going to record for about a minute and then see if we get anything that we can listen to. Okay, I think that's enough. Let's see what we got.
What's your phone's password?
Of course, 2342, like always.
Thank you. Hi, Julian. What's your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I guess we're pretty far in the dark banana scale here. So if we think about this again, what we can do right now is we can run code. This is a bit for people who are for people writing exploits, this is probably very obvious. We can write RAM, the codes in the RAM, we can execute code. This is a given. We can eavesdrop, as you've seen. We can extract data. You've seen the media info. There's other data we can extract as well. But there's one specific type of data we can also extract. We can specifically use a command that's for that, but we can also just read the flash and get it from there. It's the link key. And the Bluetooth link key is very interesting to us because it entirely changes the scope. It enables us to no longer just exploit the headphones themselves, but we can now circle back to this love relationship between Bluetooth headphones and mobile phones. And we have this cryptographic bond, as Dennis said. We have a trust relationship between those phones. We have an encrypted connection, and this encryption is entirely based on the Bluetooth link key. The mutual authentication of the two devices is based on this Bluetooth link key. This means once we extracted a Bluetooth link key from a pair of headphones, we can just become the headphones. And we can use our laptop, we can import this link key into our Bluetooth stack, and we can connect to the mobile phone. If we do so, we are in a position typically the headphones would be in. This means we will probably be using the hands-free protocol, which is a Bluetooth protocol that is designed for car audio systems and headphones alike. And it comes with the typical features you would expect for these use cases. So what you can do using it is you have call control. You can dial numbers. You can accept calls or reject calls. You have, of course, the audio routing. You can receive the audio stream and you can send, because that's what headphones need to serve their intended purpose. We have access to caller information. You might notice from your car when someone's calling, you see who's calling on your car's screen, infotainment system. Some headphones also announce who's calling, so that's the same feature set, basically. You can get some network information that's maybe not too obvious, because I've never seen this actually really used in practice. You can get the network operator's name of the phone, the signal strength, and you can get the battery level. That, I guess, is something that you also see in cars. You can ask for the subscriber number, which means the phone's own mobile number. This is something that we've only seen working on Android so far, but we're not entirely sure that it doesn't work on iOS either. You can trigger voice assistants. This is a more recently relevant feature. You might know that your headphones have this voice assistant button or some kind of gesture where you can provoke the voice assistant on your phone to start and you can talk to it. This is something we can do. And then there's phone book access. This is something that's a bit different, because there's actually another Bluetooth protocol for it, which has the sole purpose of accessing phone books, and we could probably also use that. But there is also some commands in the HFP protocol implementations in mobile phones that allows a certain access to the phone book. This, however, is, so as far as we know, only implemented in Android. But Android has a privacy setting for it, and if you do not enable this setting, your phones or your car will not have access to your phone book, and this also goes for us as attackers now. So, this brings us to our next demo, which now targets phones instead of headphones. We of course have to start with headphones. We have to extract link keys from headphones, but then our targeting moves to the mobile phone. So this is a video right now, because it involves quite a lot of steps, and I wanted to spare us the heart attack of something not working there. I'll try to walk you through it. Let's see if this, yeah. So what we see here is, oops, that's a bit too quick, sorry. I was hoping I had more time. Let's go back. What I wanted to mention, just we can see on the right, this phone is connected to a pair of headphones. They have, just as a curiosity, please note the battery level, which is 87%. It's a small detail that it's interesting to note later on. And this phone, we will now get the link keys from the pair of headphones that we can see that is connected here. So what we do first is we connect to the headphones using our toolkit, and we get the Bluetooth Classic address. We'll need that later for several purposes, and we'll also need it, use it in the next step to read the headphones flash, because Bluetooth Classic is faster. We take note of this Bluetooth Classic address in this terminal. I'll say a little bit about this later, but this is essentially the command we'll be using later to write the link key into our local Bluetooth stacks database. So now we use the toolkit again to read the flash, and specifically the area of the flash where you can get the link key from. We use the target address we just acquired, because we want to use Classic now. We use, as I said, rfcom. We will dump our result to a file. The file name here says NVDM. This is because we're dumping a configuration partition which is called NVDM. Now we have a very nice dump partition command. What it does is it reads the beginning of the flash where there is a partition table, and it will present us with a partition table to pick one to dump. So this is the partition table of the pair of headphones. We pick partition 6 because that is the NVDM partition, which contains all the configuration data. This is not as fast as I would hope. No, this is actually depending on a lot of factors. I was using a Bluetooth dongle, and it wasn't so fast. When Dennis did it yesterday, it was like maybe double the speed. So this depends on the setting. It's Bluetooth, and yeah. So just for your understanding of how quickly you can carry out this attack, you can imagine it to be about double the speed in the best case. And once this is done, we are at a very interesting point because right now we don't need the headphones anymore. We're done now. We have everything we need from the headphones. They can be turned off. They can be out of range now. It doesn't matter. We don't have to see them ever again to still be able to exploit the phone. What we do now is we have a small toolkit that can read this configuration partition, because this configuration partition has a lot of, it's kind of like a key value store, and it has many configuration settings. I'm going to dump them all now in a second. These are all the settings that are stored in this configuration partition. And for the first ones you see here, like the first 8, they contain Bluetooth pairing information. The headphones can be paired to 8 different phones. And I picked the one which I know holds the pairing information for the phone we have here. If I didn't know that beforehand, I would have to check all the 8. But I can see here, I'm parsing the content, and I can see here the Bluetooth address this link key belongs to. And if we compare that to, oops, that was a mistake. If we compare that to our phone's Bluetooth address, which you can see down here, you can see it's the same. So that's how, for example, now we can see that this is the link key that actually belongs to this phone. And yeah, now we have the target address of the mobile phone, we have the link key, and we have the address of the headphones. And these are the 3 information we need. Because what we're going to do next is we're going to write all this to our Bluetooth stacks configuration. And then we'll use a Bluetooth controller in our laptop to spoof the address of the headphones and to connect to the phone's address using the link key we just wrote into the configuration. And what we're using here is, again, basically an untouched example of BT stack, because there's no fancy, we're not doing any hacking here. The hacking already happened. We have the link key, we just configured it in the Bluetooth stack, and now we're using BT address. This is what we're doing here is just the spoofing of the headphones address. We're setting the headphones address into our Bluetooth controller, so it has the same address at the headphones. And now we're running the example, basically. Our Bluetooth controller has now the address of the headphones, and we're connecting to, these are some, don't worry about the next 2 parameters, they're mandatory but not interesting. And the last one here will be the address of the phone we want to connect to, which I apparently forgot to copy. This one. Okay, so now we're ready, and we're connected to the phone. I'm pulling up the phone again. It's not like you're seeing anything here beyond the fact that in a minute, now the connection is being established now, and you can see up there probably, yeah, now we're connected, and you can note that the battery level somehow dropped to 10% over the last 4 minutes or so. This is because the spoof device just transmits the battery level of 10%, in contrast to the actual device, the actual pair of headphones which had like 78% charging level. So now our spoof pair of headphones is connected to the phone. And as a last step of this video, I'm just going to query the mobile phone operator. And this is just all the commands we have available in the example, and I'm doing in a minute. Or did you cut the video short?
No, you pause it again.
I pause it again, sorry. I'm querying the network operator, exactly. And you can see my network operator is Telecom. So that works. And now we're trying to move forward with an actual live demo again. This is just the whole bunch of setup process that we didn't want to do live, because if something goes wrong, we're going to be really stressed out. So what we did is Dennis' laptop performed all these steps and is prepared exactly the same way you just saw in the video, and we're taking it on from here as a live demo.
Yeah, and so in this case, it's a different phone. It's a phone that's in Frida's pocket. We don't want to show the link key of this phone on the screen as well. And also, I don't think I would have been able to do all these steps here live on stage without screwing anything up. So we're basically at the case we were at the end of the video, but now we're trying to do the rest of the attack live. So now I'm connecting to that device with this Bluetooth address. And I, again, have this example, and I could try to query the...
You need that, right?
No, I don't need that. Okay. I could query the network operator or something. I could maybe trigger a call. But one of the things I can do now is, and you need to put that in your pocket.
Yeah, sorry.
And I need to remove my Apple Watch so that it doesn't authenticate me. Okay. Well, one of the things that's very interesting in that phone is Siri, and let's see if we can talk to Siri. Can we have sound?
Sorry.
Hey Siri, what's the time?
It's 11:49.
So that's that, Siri.
Okay, but okay. Well, I mean, my laptop can also tell the time. Let's try something different. We've been researching for a while, and I'm not really sure if I like Frida that much anymore. So let's try something interesting. Send a text message to my boss.
What would you like to say to my boss?
I quit.
It says, I quit. Send it.
Yes.
Done.
So let's see.
I'm not quitting, really.
This was not a legally binding text. Oh no. No? Okay. Now, we did talk about eavesdropping a bit. There's also one interesting attack scenario. So we're in the situation that I hacked Frida, and I can connect to the phone in his pocket, and he's a few feet away from me. The headphones are gone. That's, by the way, the phone model. The
I left them
headphone
at
model.
home, basically.
They're gone and not connected, and we are basically the headphones. But another thing that would be very interesting would be to see if I can actually eavesdrop on him now that his headphones are gone, just by his using his phone. And we added an interesting command here. Oh, that's difficult to read. But there's basically command I, which is dial hacker. So, well, let's try to dial hacker. Oh, you see the target is calling me.
This is basically my phone. Oh.
Now, I did one thing right now. What I did is I canceled the audio connection. So now what happened to his phone is that the headphones are still connected, but the audio connection is dropped. So audio is not coming from the headphones, from my laptop, as it was in the Siri case, but audio is coming from his phone. So maybe
I can speak in this phone here, if you can see that. It's a bit, wait, give me a second. I have a microphone. I can speak in this phone, and you can hear it coming out at Dennis' side. Can you hear me? I can speak in this phone, and he's eavesdropping on what I'm saying. This works really good in the real world.
okay, let's quickly disconnect from that phone.
Kann ich den klicken? Yeah. So the whole mess get assigned 3 CVEs. They are not released yet because the vendor decided to not publish them yet. It will happen in about 4 weeks probably. You can see them here. We don't think there's anything confidential to these CVEs beyond what we've been telling you here. The whole thing is really, I mean, it's funny if we do demos, but the whole thing is a horrible mess actually. But we'll get to the thing later on, and specifically now, Dennis is probably trying to answer some questions you have.
Which is probably, oh no, am I affected? So we will try to answer this question as good as we can. So one thing we can say is no in these cases, in these very specific cases. And what I mean by that is, for example, this Bose model, for example, a lot of Sennheiser models we've seen, the Pixel Buds, the Galaxy Buds, and all the AirPods from Apple, and most importantly, solely cable-bound devices. And the reason why we can say they are not affected is just they don't have an Aroha chip. I can't speak about the security of these devices, but I can say they do not have an Aroha chip. This is also not a list of all devices that are not affected. It's just a collection of what we know. So, well, what about the affected devices? And it's not really easy to get a list of affected devices if you just try to find it out yourself. One thing we can do is we can try to search for other devices with these Aroha Bluetooth chips, and well, the first thing you can do is Google it. And you'll find articles like these where there's talk about business relationships. So here in this case, we got the connection Sony, Aroha, but yeah, I mean, Google, right? There's also a very cool resource that's 52audio.com. They are mainly interested in like all the audio side from all these devices, and they publish extremely detailed teardowns. There are really great pictures if you are interested about the PCBs. And for us, that's also really helpful because one thing we could do was we could go to 52audio.com and just put in Aroha, and we could list all the blog posts and look at the teardowns of these devices. There's also something interesting, and that's AirPods replicas. There seems to be a very active community based around AirPod replicas that really look just like the real AirPods, and they try to behave like the real AirPods. And if you Google Aroha, you will find this subreddit and a lot of people talking about it. That's just something that will come up. But to be honest, these are not really the targets that are very interesting for us. So there are a ton of potential vulnerable devices, and we estimate the number to be more than 100 different devices, but that's really just an estimate from Googling during research. We have no idea what the actual true number is, but we assume that it's in this ballpark. And we could only verify a subset of these, which brings us to the topic of disclosure. And, well, in general, this is a very difficult thing to disclose because at the top you have Aroha. They're doing the SoC, they're implementing an SDK, and they're also publishing reference designs for customers that they can build their products based on. So they're offering a lot. But then there are a lot of vendors that use this SoC, that use the SDK, that build products based on the reference design. You'll also have OEMs and ODMs that build products for different vendors, so that's an additional layer of complexity vendor-wise. And then you have a ton of products. Every vendor has different products. There's a lot of products, and well, the number, as I said, is totally unknown to us. And at the bottom, you have the consumers, the people like us that buy all these devices. And we have no idea who these are, and there's no way that we can reach them or tell them about their device or find out who they are. It's also basically impossible to find all the products for us. We can search for some of them, and we can find some of them, but we will never find them all. And similar to the vendors, we might be able to identify a few of the vendors, and we might be able to talk to a few of the vendors, but again, the complexity with the OEMs and ODMs makes this much more difficult. So our best chance is probably Aroha themselves. So, okay, well, let's start with them. And their security disclosure page looks really good. If you look at that's just an excerpt of that. There are more very positive things on there. So, for example, they aim to respond within a few days. And also, one of the very important things, they see it in their responsibility to notify their vendors and OEMs, and they also want to do this within 90 days, so that sounds really cool. Also, we can use PGP, so that sounded nice. So what we did is, on March 25th, we contacted them and we sent them a technical report that basically describes these attacks we just shown. We didn't have videos back then, but we had the proof of concepts and what we could extract and what this means and what an attacker could potentially do with that. And we also gave them a list of devices that we currently knew that are affected. 1 month later, we told them that we will start to contact individual vendors because we didn't hear from them. We tried several different communication attempts. We also sent out a message via their contact form on the website. And then that's what we did. We contacted 3 of the vendors we identified, and 1 of them responded. Then 1 month later, we got the first response from Aroha. Then the communication between us and them started, and Aroha seemed to be very committed to fix these issues with priority, which you can also see by the fact that on June 4th, they were already able to supply their device manufacturers with an updated SDK version. So the device manufacturers could start on June 4th with patching their firmwares and creating updates. Apparently, at the end of June, whatever that exactly means, the first vendor will publish firmware updates. Unfortunately, we don't know which vendor this is, and we haven't seen any updates, which is also a problem from the vendor side, because when you try to look for firmware updates for these devices on the vendor pages, you might have some pages that tell you about firmware versions, but there are a lot of vendors that don't talk about firmware updates at all. So you have no idea what's the current firmware, when was it released. So there could be a patch, we have no idea. Well, and today, June 26th, 93 days after the initial disclosure, we're doing a partial disclosure of the vulnerability. As you probably have seen before, we did restrict some of the technical information like the UUIDs or commands, and we will also not release weaponized exploits or anything like that. And the future, well, vendors are rolling out updates now, but we don't really know anything about that. And well, crucially, users need to be updating their headphones, and I guess that is, after the vendors, one of the largest problems, because you need to make the users aware that they should update their headphones, and you should sort of force them to do that. So yeah, I know, okay, finally tell us the vulnerable devices, and this is the list, basically, just a few disclaimers for this. These were devices that we, a lot of phones right now, okay. These are devices that we identified via research, and then we were able to verify by actually communicating with them. So we bought a few, we had a few colleagues that had these devices. So this is confirmed from our side. If there's a vendor with just one model, it doesn't mean that only one model is affected, but it also doesn't mean that all other devices are affected. That's really just the ground truth we know right now. And another thing that's really important to note, and I want to make this with the Jabra Elite example, with the 2 footnotes there, they did some security work on there. So there is no GUT, which means all the discoverability aspects and the pairing via BLE is just not there. So that's good. They also do not have that Bluetooth Classic pairing vulnerability, which basically makes all of these attacks we've just shown much harder, and essentially they are not as vulnerable as other devices. And you can see this also for some of the other devices. Some things are fixed or some things are a little bit different. Here, for example, with Sony, they do have some devices, some of the newer models do not have this Bluetooth Classic pairing vulnerability. However, the topmost, which is their newest flagship model, the XM6, was the one that we've just shown the eavesdrop example with. So there, the Bluetooth Classic pairing vulnerability still exists. And well, we try to so we don't have numbers, we don't have detailed data. One thing we can do is we can briefly check whether there are devices around us that we are very certain that they are affected. And so, for example, if you enter a train in Germany somewhere, you will certainly find one of these devices that you could potentially attack. So that's like a very subjective number that we can tell you. There's just a lot of these devices, but yeah, no fixed number.
There's at least one in Bluetooth range right now. Yeah, so this is where we stand. Remains the question where we go from here. There's not a lot to say. We will release a blog post and maybe a talk with further technical details in a couple of weeks when we have the feeling that the actual rollout of patches has progressed reasonably far. This is the whole situation is a bit difficult to handle because we have very good reasons to believe that there is a lot of pressure needed in this situation for vendors to actually come out with patches soon. So we're hoping that this talk contributes to that. But at the same time, the situation right now is, of course, kind of an unpleasant one for everyone. Yeah, so we'll see when the firmware updates come. For the vendors, at least for a brief moment here, I want to urge them, God damn it, if you're selling a $500 device to customers, do some security testing with it, because these are not far-fetched, convoluted vulnerabilities. This is basic Bluetooth security. And yeah, I'm not gonna spend a lot more time talking about that, but come on. Yeah, and please have working security programs and contacts. There's a lot of vendors who have bug bounties right now, and that's all fine. If your scope there says you can report XSS and whatnot in these and that domains via HackerOne or similar, but please also have a security contact where we can have reasonable exchange if we want to talk different things than just the flood of false XSS problems you get reported all day. I know this is hard, but please have a security at email and have people respond to email to something that's coming in there. For users, this is what actually bothers me the most. We don't have a lot of super helpful advice for users because, well, of course, please update your headphones once the patches are there. Until then, if you feel you're at risk, this is we have to say this is not something that is very likely going to be exploited at a scale economically motivated. This is not going to happen. But it's at the same time something that can very well be targeted at individual people who are maybe at risk. And if you feel you belong in that category, we can only advise you to not use your Bluetooth headphones for the time being. And this is very important, unpair them from your phone. Remove the pairing in the phone, because if you really are at risk, we may not be the first ones to notice that. And if we're not the first, the keys, your link key might already be stolen. And as long as the pairing is in your phone is basically vulnerable. Yeah, looking a bit further, we feel that in general, and this is Bluetooth peripherals will remain a very interesting target and will become a very interesting target in the future because phones are becoming fortified. Mobile phone security is at a level that dwarfs everything else. Like if we look at our workstations and anything else, nothing compares to the platform security of mobile phones. But that's just not true at all for the peripherals they communicate with. As you have seen, for this specific models of headphones, it's horrible, but I'm very, very certain there are still many other peripherals or other headphones that are in the same boat in a way. HID devices as a peripheral that's potentially dangerous to the systems they're paired with, they already got some scrutiny. Yeah? We have seen hacks in the past of wireless keyboards and stuff like that. We have seen Niels' talk yesterday about the Apple Watch. This is a very, very interesting target as well. These are, like smartwatches are, of course, peripherals that are very interesting in the same regard as these Bluetooth headphones here. Yeah, it's depending on the level of access Bluetooth peripherals provide towards a mobile phone, we have to consider that even physical access to the peripherals may be a viable attack scenario. Because if the reward is high enough, stealing a bunch of headphones and extracting something physically from them, or stealing a smartwatch, is really something that's worth the effort in certain targeted scenarios. Okay, so with that sinister ending, that's it from us. As we said, there will be a blog post and a white paper. An advisory is probably live right now. Yeah, it's live right now. Yeah, we will try to release information on how to check if your pair of headphones is affected. It's kind of hard to do that whilst we don't want to release technical details because that, yeah, it's kind of at odds with each other. And yeah, if you're developing headphones and you're unsure whether your development partner has supplied you a chip that is affected, talk to us. And before we thank you, there's just one more thing. Yeah, for those who have been at Niels' great talk yesterday, they have seen you can do Bluetooth hacking with your badge. And Malte did some great last-minute development work and actually built one of the very simple commands that this protocol implements. He implemented it for the badge. And we have really never tried this because it's a last-minute thing. We'll see whether it works in the way, right? Yeah. So this is a pair of headphones. I have to take them out, right? Yeah. So this is Dennis is actually connected to the badge right now. This is the terminal output of the badge. And
I think you need to connect to the phone.
I thought I was.
You need to listen to some music.
Yeah, maybe I need to play some music because I am connected. Come on. Okay, I'm listening to music now, so.
There you are.
That looks good, right? Okay.
Come on.
I think you can only restart it, maybe. No.
Lots of flipper devices, by the way.
There they are. I can only.
One last try.
Okay. I think we'd rather move on to the questions, right?
Okay, well, then I guess we'll open for questions.
Yeah, sorry, that was not the...
Thank you very much, Frida and Dennis. And that's the moment to ask your questions. Any questions so far?
Why do you assume that other Bluetooth vendors implement that more securely?
You mean the pairing, the protocol, which aspect specifically?
Well, you have now only one vendor and you hacked it successfully, but I mean, I assume there are many more. And have you any indications that these are more secure?
Not really. So the slide didn't mean that they are more secure. There's just one thing, the Bluetooth Low Energy discovery part is something that's a very easy indication of something that is there, and there are a lot of headphones that are that already have like the first mitigation mechanism that you cannot discover them so easily. But it's really just, so I don't think, I did look at AirPods before, a few years ago. Didn't find these kinds of vulnerabilities there, but that's really, I think apart from that, we cannot really talk much about other vendors because we didn't really look at them.
Yeah.
Question right here.
Hi, are you planning to release the tools you used for firmware dumping? I think there's application and research and maybe even defense.
We would, yeah, we want to, but it's really, if we release that, it's basically the full thing, because it's an implementation of the protocol. You can dump, if you can dumping the flash is actually prerequisite for all the interesting attacks. So we want to release it, especially to enable further research of these types of devices. But dumping the flash is exactly what's enabling all these spooky attacks. So we can't really release that whilst many headphones are still vulnerable to this via Bluetooth.
All right, so then there's another question here.
Hi, thanks. If you have code execution on one of those compromised headphones, can I use that to compromise nearby headphones, or in another way is it vulnerable?
Thank you for that question. It's a bold claim, so we didn't make it in the slides. But yes, we're very convinced you could worm this. Yes.
Yeah, we tried to experiment with code execution, and that works. And so it's, I think it's mostly an engineering effort. So it's very hard to do this reliably and then to attack others via gut or discover them and stuff. But yeah, it's probably possible, but hard to implement. But yeah, like resources and time, that's probably it.
Further questions?
Am I correct to assume that Bluetooth speakers would be very similar to these Bluetooth headphones?
Oh, sorry, we should have said there are Bluetooth speakers on that list. If you look, for example, here, some of those, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know the models.
I'm not entirely sure, but some of these are actually boomboxes.
So yeah, it's Bluetooth audio devices in general, probably. But the thing is that Aroha chips are very popular in true wireless headphones, so where you have two individual earbuds, because that's something they're apparently doing well in. So that's where they're more distributed, but there are also other audio devices.
Just a question to protect myself. Is there a tool chain just to scan if my Bluetooth device is vulnerable for that? Or do you release such a small tool for us?
We will, I think we will, in a couple of weeks, we release more technical details, also release something that will help you to get an indication of whether you're probably affected at least. But to actually verify, you kind of just need to try to dump flash or something like that and see if it works. And if we release that, we're essentially releasing an exploit, which we think would not really be responsible in 4 weeks' time, but maybe in a year or so, I don't know.
Yeah, we just discussed a lot about this because we would have liked to release something that doesn't give away too much information, that doesn't risk other people, but that gives you an easy indication. But we figured that it's just not possible at this time. Which is sad, but yeah.
I guess cars would also be affected if you have a hands-free, or don't you think this is the case?
We have no indication that any car company uses Aroha Bluetooth chips, but we can't say more actually because yeah, we just never came across anything that hinted in that direction.
All right. Thank you very much for attending this talk. Thank you for researching.